Well, hello, I'm Doug Apple, back with another special interview for you today. We're going to be talking about government. Hold on, it's not going to be boring, and we're not just trying to stir the pot and make you angry. What we're going to do is talk to Mike Sharman about the foundations of good government. In fact, there are biblical models for good government. So if good government interests you, and from a biblical perspective, then stay tuned. We're going to dive into this with Mike Sharman. He's the legal counsel for Share Healthcare, the nonprofit healthcare sharing ministry that you've been hearing about on Wave 94, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But these foundations for good government, they're so important because they do affect our budget, the economy, healthcare, how you pay for your healthcare. Good government matters, and it can be found in a biblical basis. So we're going to talk about that with Mike Sharman. Mike, go ahead and dive into this topic for us.
Well, thank you, Doug, for having me on, and thanks for enjoying this topic with me. You know, before we can even consider what type of earthly governments we have, we need to recognize that the first phrase in the Bible, Genesis 1:1, and the first part of that is, in the beginning, God. So God is our government. He began it all. He is the great Lord over all. He is Yahweh. So we need to recognize that as the foundation of government. And then if we get that right, even our mistakes can't be so bad. In the beginning, God. And so then in Genesis, God delegated some of that authority to humans, and specifically to the husband and wife. And we really need to recognize that because, Satan tries to attack God's models of good government. He first attacks, well, did God really have that authority? Then he tries to attack the delegated authority that God had made of husband and wife. So Satan tries to attack marriage. He tries to attack the family. So we need to recognize how essential and how, you can use that word again, foundational, is the government, the delegated authority of government to the husband and wife that God did. At Genesis 1:27-28, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion, there's that governmental term, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Have dominion, he said, over all the earth. So and who did he give that to? The husband and the wife. So we really need to recognize that. And also, interestingly, in our modern era, it's important to recognize that even though God had laid out the hierarchy of that husband and wife, he gave this authority equally to them. Let's kind of pay attention to that again. Mm-hmm. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So again, that foundation, in the beginning God, and then God delegated it to the husband and wife, and then from there we began having problems. Why? Because, Eve bought into the lie that Satan was giving her, or the deception. Adam stood by and did nothing, so we're living under that Adamic nature now, where man is naturally sinful, and it takes a supernatural God to have us reoriented toward the government that he wants us to. And that's where our Bible comes in. So, economics really motivates government. So let's think of economics first. So there's capitalism. So the actual dictionary definition of capitalism is an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decision, and the means of production, distribution, and exchange are determined mainly by competition in a free market. All right, so you notice within that concept of capitalism, there really isn't any government. Private ownership, private decisions, the production, etc., are by competition, free market. So I live in Madison County. I'm about 20 miles from our President James Madison's home, Montpelier. So I always love a good James Madison quote. And here's what he said. In a word, as a man is said to have a right in his property, he may equally be said to have a property in his rights. All right, now think about that, because that's really the core of our Bill of Rights and the core of our American foundation of government. A man is said to have a right in his property. He may equally be said to have a property in his right. Okay, so it's just understood and recognized that if somebody steals your car, they have stolen something of yours. Mm-hmm. But if somebody steals your right to free speech, your right to have religion, your right to raise your family as you chose, they have stolen something from you. When somebody takes your rights, they have taken an actual property interest from you, something that is valuable. I mean, when President Trump had come into office, one of the first things he started talking about was the gold Visa card. Well, why was that? Because he wanted people to be paying millions for the right to automatically come here and have a visa. Why was that? Because rich people elsewhere who are in a non-free country are willing to pay millions to come to a free one. Our rights are valuable. Mm-hmm. So, but we want to be recognizing where those rights come from. So we have 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. All right, then we can say the obverse. Where you don't have the Spirit of the Lord, you don't have liberty. And we can obviously see that in godless countries, and we can see that in countries that their state religion, their governmental religion, is one that is not Christianity. But we can see it in the United States in the laws that we've had, or the refusal to exercise and enforce laws we have. Where there is not liberty in our nation, that's where Satan's been able to establish his government. In those states that allow abortion right up to the moment of birth and sometimes after, Satan's got in there, and he's corrupted the government that we should have. God created that image. Husband and wife are supposed to be the first form of government. God loves those children, and if Satan can get in there and destroy it, he will. Now, the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So then we need to recognize also one of the fundamental principles of capitalism, Ecclesiastes 3:13, and every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. So what's the gift of our God? The fact that we can work hard, and have production from it that we get to enjoy. And then 2 Thessalonians 3:12, now those who are such we command and exhort through our Lord Jesus Christ that they work in quietness and eat their own bread. Not someone else's, not your neighbor's. You don't demand it from the government or your community. You eat your own bread. And that's basically capitalism. But capitalism, Satan can get in and destroy, so we want to have a true free market. And the dictionary definition of free market, and the reason I keep coming back to these dictionary definitions is we have a sloppy media definitions of them so often, and that's what tends to permeate our collective consciousness of what these terms mean, and those media sloppy definitions are false. We want to really recognize what it is. So a free market is an economic system in which the prices of goods and services are determined by market forces, i.e. supply and demand, rather than government controls, a price-setting monopoly, or some other authority. It is the same as an open market. All right, so what are we now seeing in healthcare? We're seeing a distortion of prices. We're seeing a lack of competition. We're seeing monopolistic creation of a price system that has nothing to do with the market forces, supply and demand. Well, how do we know that? Well, because we can look at other countries and see how much they charge for surgeries, how much they charge for pharmaceuticals, and we can just see our market forces have been completely disrupted by the combination of the government's controls and the oligarchies and sometimes monopolies of the healthcare systems. It's disrupted everything. But what's the Bible say about it? Galatians 5:13, for you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Okay, so we have capitalism, we have the free market, so that means I get to charge whatever I want and gouge everybody. Well, no, not if you're following the biblical model of the free market. Galatians 5:13, for you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. You know, one good advertising tool and marketing tool or concept is find a need and fill it.
Mm-hmm.
Find a need. But then marketing changes that sometimes to create a want and fill it. But we want to find the need. What do people really need? Well, right now they need less expensive health care. Right now they need less expensive housing. Right now they need less expensive food. Right? So we want to notice those needs of the people in love, serve one another, and fill it. And we want to do it with proper pricing and pricing that is, is fair to everyone. So Proverbs 11:1, dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. Boy, that's really harsh right there. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight, which is don't put your thumb on the scale for one person and take it off for another. Don't decide what your price is if somebody comes into the door and is able to, you can tell by what they're wearing, et cetera, what they drove up in, that they can afford more than the other one. Your price is your price is your price. Matthew 20:11-15. This is definitely a description of a free market. Matthew 20:11-15. And when they had received the payment, they complained against the landowner, saying, these last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us who have borne the burden and heat of the day. Because in this story, this parable that Jesus was giving, a guy went to the day labor market, the folks standing on the street corner and waiting for work. And early, just right after dawn, he grabbed up a whole bunch of them. And then shortly before the end of the workday, he grabbed up more. And at the end of the day, he paid them both the same. And so the ones who were there early morning were like, oh, wait a second, we worked all day. And you're paying us the same as what you paid those others that you just grabbed up and they've only worked part of the day? And then the scripture goes on and says, but he answered one of them and said, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius, that is a day's wages? And notice the free market in that. Did you, the laborer, not agree to work for me? Mm-hmm. He wasn't forcing them to. He offered them a wage that they agreed to accept. They didn't have minimum wages. They didn't have you can't charge more. They didn't have unions. They agreed to work for a certain wage. So, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I am good? So he's saying that those who want strict equity, equal, outcomes there that they want, dictated by what they want as opposed to what the free market wants, that's evil. And the landlord, the owner of the property who had hired these guys, said, well, it's my wages, my crops that I'm asking you to deal with, so can't I do what I want with my own things? Well, that's the free market. Balanced by the biblical law of a just weight is his delight. Don't use your liberty as an opportunity for flesh, but through love serve one another. And then we begin getting to our forms of government, democracy. And democracy is, Greek compound word from demo, people, and kratos, power, demokratia. That was where it came from. So democracy, power of the people. And so James Madison, giving a good quote again from my neighbor, before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, James Madison said, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe, that is, God. So for you to properly exert your rule as the people, before you can properly have power to the people, power of the people, those individuals within that society need to be governed by the governor of the universe. Quite different from the that fist in the air socialist and communist sign of more power to the people. Well, no, James Madison is saying you don't deserve power unless you've been imbued with appropriate power by the governor of the universe. So Benjamin Franklin had written a letter back in 1778, and he said, a Bible and a newspaper in every house, a good school in every district, all studied and appreciated as they merit, are the principal support of virtue, morality, and civil liberty. So Franklin was agreeing with Madison that for us to have a good, solid, well-organized, well-ordered, and peaceful government, we need to have a literate, biblically literate, both educationally literate and then biblically literate people. That's how you get good government. And we want to go back at this point, thinking of power to the people, democracy. We want to go back and review Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created him. That means that's true for me. That means it's true for the person standing next to me. That means that's true for the person standing in front of me in line who I'm getting frustrated over because they're taking too long doing what they're doing. But they have just as much right to do what they want as I do because we're both created in the image of God, which was the basis of that wonderful phrase in our Declaration of Independence. For we're all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And okay, so we didn't have that to be true for everybody at the origin, but that was our ideal, and we've been striving toward it ever since. Before that Declaration of Independence, every nation on earth had slavery in one form or another. I mean, everybody in a monarchy is a slave, a servant to the monarch. The monarch owned everybody in his kingdom, and he could tell them what to do or what not to do, and we definitely saw that in the history of England, Ireland, Scotland, etc., all the other monarchies too. In China, in imperial China at that time, everyone was owned by the emperor. The slaves that we received here in the colonies in America, but that at the time we brought in that Declaration of Independence, those slaves were captured by warlords in one part, African warlords, in one tribal chieftains, you could call them, in one part of Africa. They would go into the interior, capture other Africans, enslave them, and bring them out and sell them to the sailors who came on their shores and then brought them over. I mean, everywhere was slavery, but whoa, what happened? Declaration of Independence. We had a revolution of the world by our little 13 colonies clinging to the coast that decided unanimously that they would proclaim we're all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that ideal has been brought forward generation after generation after generation in these United States, and we need to continue to pursue that. We need to continue to remember each one of those words is true. We're all, every one of us, endowed. That it means it was given to us as an inheritance by our Creator. Whether you believe it or not, God created every single one of you, whether we believe it or not. And so we're all given these inalienable rights. Inalienable. Somebody can try to steal it, but it still goes with you. That right goes with you. we have rights in our property and property in our rights. So then that gets us to, okay, so why don't we just abolish then the Electoral College? Why don't we just abolish the Senate, have pure democracy? In fact, we don't even really need the House. Now that we have YouTube and the Internet, we all can just punch a button whenever we want and have instant democracy. Well, because what you really would then have is a continual anarchy, really. So we have a republic. We have a republic in which our representatives are chosen by our vote of those who choose to vote. So a republic, the definition of that is power is held by the people and their elected representatives. The country itself is a public, not a private affair. And it comes from the Latin res publica, public affair. So Benjamin Franklin was asked by a woman, one of the mayor's wife of Philadelphia. He was asked for her right after the last day of the Constitutional Convention. She asked, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? Because that was, they just had the revolution. They got freed from a monarchy. They really knew no other form of government, really. I mean, they'd had legislatures, they'd had democratic rule, more in a parliamentary way than as the government. The supreme government of the nation had always been a monarchy and had of all the ones they knew. Well, here there was something quite different that they'd been talking about, but weren't sure whether it was going to occur. And remember, the Constitutional Convention had been secret and private. So they really didn't know. And so this wife of the mayor had asked Benjamin Franklin, well, doctor, because that's what he was known as, Dr. Franklin. Well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? And Franklin gave his famous reply, a republic, if you can keep it.
If you can keep it.
That's our charge, isn't it? Can we keep it? And what are we warring against? We're warring against Satan's distortions of good government. Good government is capitalism, free market, democracy, and a republic. You put those four together under God, and you have good and peaceful, content government. But within that, there are these pressures, and externally there's these pressures that Satan has, externally meaning outside of our nation. So fascism is one, and that dictionary definition is a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts the nation and often race above the individual. And that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. So you have both the economy and the government coming together here. Fascism will have private ownership of business, but the government may own part of it, but it will absolutely regulate all of it. You no longer have a free market. You no longer have an open market. You no longer have true capitalism. You may have demand and supply, but it's controlled by the government. That's in part fascism. And then you have that forcible opposition of your forcible suppression of anybody that would go against it. Forcible meaning by violence. That is closely related to socialism, which again distorts capitalism, free market, democracy, and a republic. By the definition of socialism, and boy, do we forget this one a lot, is the means of production, distribution, and exchange is owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Private property may exist, but it is owned or regulated by the community/government. In Marxist theory, socialism is a transitional state to communism. So I think that's really important, that socialism is not the end. Socialism is a step. A step to what? A step to communism, which is complete government ownership of everything, including the people and the people's minds. So, and who came up with this theory? Karl Marx. And so Karl Marx had said, this is his quote, "Between the capitalist and communist society, lies the period of the revolutionary transformation of the one into the other. Corresponding to this is also a political transition period in which the state can be nothing but the revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat, of the worker. Well, that's what we're seeing being forced upon many of the citizens in a lot of our urban areas, and being forced upon the citizens in California is socialism. Now, also, though, think of how much of all of our national stuff is socialism. I mean, all of our health care is socialism. The means of production, distribution, and exchange is regulated by the community as a whole, meaning the government. Private property may exist, a hospital may exist, a doctor's practice may exist, but it is regulated by the community government. In Marx's theory, socialism is a transitional state to communism. In our governmental theory right now, what we have as the Affordable Care Act, a good misnomer, and all the other massive federal impositions on health care are transitions to national health care and a takeover of all health care. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a voiced plan of those who are proposing it. Chief among them is Hillary Clinton. She's been saying that since the 1980s and working toward it. When Hillary healthcare did not pass back when, Bill Clinton was president and she was pushing this, when it didn't pass, she said, okay, we're going to do it incrementally now, step by step. And they have. The ones who are advocating the most for or advocating against the freedom of health care will advocate just as strongly for nationalized health care, a complete takeover of it at every level. Pharmaceuticals, hospitals, small clinics, large clinics, big hospitals. We want to look at what did God say on this. In Isaiah 48:17, thus said the Lord your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, I am the Lord your God, who teaches you to profit, who leads you by the way you should go. So even, Old Testament to now, God wanted us to have the ability for us to have profit, not socialist takeover of our businesses, but profit. But we also need to recognize that basic premise of socialism, where socialism can either take the business and property that we have, or regulate it to such a degree that the government is the boss and not us. The government is the owner and not us. And that goes right to the Ten Commandments, Exodus 20:15. You shall not steal. Well, what motivates all this? Well, the 10th commandment, Exodus 20:17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that's your neighbor's. And isn't that at the root of socialism and communism? Is that motivation of either a strong minority that can take over, or actually a majority that can vote it in. That old phrase, you can vote in socialism and communism, but you have to war your way out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's that coveting by others of what someone else has, that they want it, and if they can't earn the same thing, they're just going to take it. Well, that violates every biblical principle, doesn't it? And so communism is a specific yet distinct form of socialism. Again, I'm hitting the dictionary definition, in which there is common ownership of the means of production, and in the absence of social classes and money. There is no private property. This is a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war, which is why you're seeing a whole lot of arguments right now, leading to a classless society in which all public property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. And it's from the Latin communis, which meant common. Okay, now the problem is, in actual form, that in communist societies, you have an elite top part that is rich and controls everything. And that's the way it winds up. But even in pure communism, because the Puritans, when they came over, our colonial Puritans, when they came over, they first tried to have a communist labor force. That is, they wanted to have everything in common, everybody worked commonly, etc. Jamestown had the same too at the very beginning. And both failed, both starved people to death because just the inherent lack of motivation that you have, and that one person can harm the collective. And so when they both, the Jamestown and then the Puritans up in the Bay Colony area, when they pulled away from that and went to private ownership, private work, boy, they started to flourish.
Mm-hmm.
Karl Marx had said in the Communist Manifesto, communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Now, how many folks out there do you think actually know this was Karl Marx's goal? To abolish eternal truth, abolish all religion and all morality. And James 3:16 speaks against it, for where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. Well, we sure see that, don't we? And Hebrews 13:5 kind of warns us not to even get to that temptation point. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So God himself, Christ himself, is our sufficiency. Now, of course, we have other scriptures that tell us to be the best that we possibly can. Why? Because God created us and we want to use what he gave to the fullest. But we don't want to be covetous. We don't want to be violating the 10th commandment. We want to be content. The Proverbs 16:26, the person who labors for himself, for his hungry mouth drives him on. Desperation and opportunity is what made America great. Europe was desperate for freedom, so they came here and they had opportunity of all this land. Well, they had a lot of privation, a lot of sacrifices to make something of it, but it had a huge productive spark and made people owners who used to be servants, who made people wealthy who used to be poor. And it made America be able to feed the world. Probably ought to just close on 2 Corinthians 3:17, which we said before. For the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. When we're really reading Scripture, going over it and over it and over it, as did the ones who wrote our founding documents and lived them out, then we're going to have liberty. If we deny God, if we try to have the rule of man as opposed to the rule of God, we'll mess it up.
So where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Meanwhile, it seems like a lot of people think, well, the more of the Spirit of God you had involved in government, or the more, Christianity you had involved in government, the less liberty you would have. Why do they think that?
Well, because they've been hearing satanic problems or satanic propaganda, let's say, people saying, well, if you allow people to just preach wherever they want, et cetera, and actually speak about godly principles, then you're going to have a theocracy. And our founders were very conscious of that because they'd come from England. Their rules had come from England. The people their forebears had, if they hadn't themselves. And in England, it was whatever religion the monarch was, that's what you had to be. There was not, as we have, a Bill of Rights that allows you to own your own mind. There's property, there are rights in our property, and property in our rights. And that you'd be free to speak it, publish it, print about it, and that the state couldn't impose a religion upon you. We're not a theocracy, but absolutely everything in our founding, everything in our whole culture, capitalism, free market, democracy, a republic, all of those are founded in the Bible. They're created there. You can't have biblical thought in government without having that. You have a distortion of government in it. If you try to take away one of those elements of what makes a good government, because each one of those elements are biblical. A theocracy is not. A theocracy is, is telling you, like England had, you either believe the way I do, or you die, or you'll be your abilities within the culture will be reduced. As King James had said about the dissenters who became the Puritan colony that came over, as he said about them, they'll either believe as I do, or I will harry them out of the land, or worse. Well, that's what we don't want. That's what we don't have. We believe if you have religion in the free market, just as you do everything else, Christ will win out in the free marketplace of ideas, because he is what everybody is absolutely demanding. That salvation, that freedom, that comfort, that peace, that healing. And he can supply all of us with all of those things. So in the demand and supply of the free market, Christ will win. We don't have to fear Islam or Hinduism or Buddhism or any of that.
Yeah, you mentioned Marx wanting to do away with eternal truths, and I thought, you can't do away with eternal truths.
Well, Marx was a little boy essentially all his life, rebelling against his father and grandfather, who were rabbis. He was rebelling against the cultures of his day that said you can only have one woman. Well, he didn't want that, and he didn't do that. So he was just in rebellion, and he used his various philosophies to justify his own selfish self. And, well, that's why he proclaimed these things, and why it's so appealing to other people who just want what they want when they want it because they want it.
Well, you're an attorney by trade, and so the law is your business. You're also the legal counsel for Share Healthcare, so in a sense, healthcare is your business. As we close today, tell us just a little bit about Share Healthcare. Well, Share Healthcare is trying to be the embodiment of these freedom principles that we've just talked about. God is the creator, in the beginning God. So we want to be doing in Share Healthcare, which is a medical ministry, a 501c3 nonprofit, whose ministry specifically is sharing the medically necessary medical expenses of the members. So since in the beginning God, we want to have everything within our model of healthcare sharing, try to be as biblical as we can. So it is capitalistic at heart. We're $149 per month for a single, $249 per month for a couple, $349 for a family of four, and $50 for each child after that. Well, in the healthcare marketplace, you ain't going to find anything cheaper than that. So capitalism works. People will see that we have the service that they want, an ability to be able to share their medical needs with others in a very affordable way. And then they're going to be thinking, well, why is this? How come this is so much less expensive? Because the average of employer-provided health insurance across the nation is $2,600. So with that, then we're able to explain, well, because we are Christian, because we are trying to live by our beliefs, but also because we are in a free market. We're not. We don't have to be regulated as insurance. We're specifically exempt from the Affordable Care Act, which mandates so many things by the federal government. So we're free from state government mandates. We're free from federal government mandates. We're free from those socialist concepts, which is what those are. And we're able to be in the free market, so we don't share in alcohol-related problems. We don't ban people from drinking. We have it be moderate, that as a member, you can have 2 to 3 drinks a week. If you have more than that, well, sorry, we aren't going to have you as a member because you're hurting the body and you're going against biblical principles. We don't have tobacco users. Both alcohol and tobacco are huge problems for us physically, and they're contrary to that basic premise of that we are the temple now. We as Christians, Christ is in us, our Holy Spirit is in us. Our body is that temple. Our body is the synagogue. Our body is the church. Collectively, we are the church as we gather together as people, not the buildings, but the people. And so misuse of alcohol, any use of tobacco is totally contrary to that. So bam, our prices come down right away. We're in the free market. We're not constrained by those socialist constructs of the state regulation and the federal regulation. We're in a democracy. The people choose to come to us, and their choice
we have guidelines that have been set up from the beginning, but we have appeal process within it. If somebody's sharing did not go the way they wanted, they get to appeal first to their member advocate, then to the board, but then the ultimate decision maker, the Supreme Court, let's say, of our ministry is a randomly chosen group of 3 members who get to choose what to do. And we have that organization, that orderly thing of our handbook. But then if there is disagreement, which as people we're going to have disagreements, ultimately that's decided upon by the people. We don't dictate to others. We don't try to have it be a socialist model of, this is everything. We do try to have even weights. That is, if you're 20, it's 149 for a single, 249 for a couple, 349 for a family of 4. If you're 70 or 75, it's 149 for a single, 249 for a couple, 349 for a family of 4, etc. We don't charge more or less for what part of the country you're in, any of those things. So that's what we try to do. We try to live, as I mentioned, and try to govern this little program as best as possible in the biblical way we can within the constraints of our culture. But we also try to do it as an example of, look what you can do when the body of Christ comes together and is able to break free of the socialist constraints that we have in so many different ways. And that basically is what Share Healthcare is all about.
Well, if people want to find out more information, they can call 1-844-SHARE-HC and talk to someone about Share Healthcare, or you can visit their website and find many more details, sharehealthcare.com. That's our special guest, Mike Sharman. And for Wave 94, I'm Doug Apple.